And our word for today on this Thursday, September the 19th, our words for today, hold fast. Hold fast, our words for today. And here to talk about it, Andrew Reinhart. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Dave and Ron. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing well.
Good, good.
You know, earlier, Wendy Sheridan talked about the fog clearing up out there. I don't know. That might have been fake news. There's a lot of fog driving in today. But I had to get off the highway to get down here. So our words for the day are hold fast. Hold fast in your lane when you're in the fog. No, just kidding. Hold fast. You know, this is from our first reading, Paul's letter to the Corinthians. You know, there's some letters, most of them, Paul is writing back to communities that he previously visited. One of the exceptions of this would be the letter to the Romans, and of course, letters to individuals. But here in Corinthians, he's saying, hold fast to the word I preached to you, unless you believed in vain, for I handed on to you as of first importance what I also received. Hold fast, hold fast. You know, there's this dynamic in our faith of, I think, periods of where the faith kind of feels alive, God's present. And St. Ignatius of Loyola called this a period of consolation. Right? It's like God's presence is there. It feels easy to pray. You are motivated in spiritual things. But there's also periods of what he describes as desolation, where God feels distant, where it's like, are you hearing me, Lord? You don't have motivation to pray. You're drawn to earthly things. And of course, there can be sort of natural and supernatural causes and versions of these things. And in this life of faith, you know, our moments of conversion are so precious and special. You know, I think back to when I was kind of having an experience of a deepening of my faith right at the end of high school when I was 18, in moments where the Lord was so real to me. And, you know, that's like, I'm either crazy or God is real. There's not another way to make sense of my life. And this idea of holding fast to what you experienced of the Lord. You know, I think of our gospel reading today of the Lord giving the story of mercy, you know, but this fella that got himself in debt, what are the odds that he might get himself in debt again, right? You know, I mean, if his habits haven't changed, if his lifestyle hasn't changed, if he hasn't really converted, you know, he might need to have another debt forgiven. And will he hold fast, remember the love that he had received? And in so many ways, that's me in my conversion, right? The Lord has forgiven my debts, and then I continue to sin. I continue to put negative things on the ledger. So in the midst of desolation, you know, one of the things that Ignatius of Loyola recommends to folks is one, not to make any changes to your spiritual plan of life. Like, don't decide to stop to pray or to leave your vocation, et cetera, et cetera. But he also just makes the comment of holding fast. And part of it is knowing that it's temporary. One of the enemy's tricks is to claim dominion over our past and future. Meaning you'll hear something like this in your head and in your heart. It's always been like this, and it will always be like this. Right? And when that kind of absolutes comes in, you know it's the enemy speaking. Because the reality is our emotions, our feelings, our spiritual states, they ebb and flow. They come and go. And that's sort of the natural pattern of growth. So these great words from St. Paul that he preaches to us today, too, as much as he's preaching to the Corinthians, to hold fast to the word that we received, hold fast to, you know, that first love of the Lord that you had. Interesting, when Adam and Eve are created, the gospel writer starts to use the words man and woman. And one of the ways to interpret that word man that's used in Hebrew is actually to remember. To remember. And it's in specific reference to the covenant. In remembering the covenant, remembering what the Lord gave to them so they can remain faithful. So we have to apply this in our life too. We have to remember that experience of the Lord in those periods of darkness, in those periods of despair, in the periods of desolation, so that we can hold fast to the truth, persevere in virtue, and continue to live our life for the Lord. But we do it in faith that it will get better. So our word for the day is hold fast.
Yeah, and appreciate so much of that, and in particular, your starting point there. When you first met the Lord, or when you were young, you thought, I'm either crazy or God is real. One of those has to be true. And then once you decide that God is real, everything has to be reordered. But I will tell you, it's not easy, right, Andrew? I mean, it's designed not to be easy, but
Amen.
sometimes
Amen.
you just got to walk through it.
And typically during that reordering process, there's a point where you're like, God, are you still there?
Yeah,
You know,
right.
you felt so real before. And part of that is important because it purifies our motivation. Because we ultimately have to answer the question, do I love what God gives me, or do I love God? And experiencing that desolation has a purifying effect in our heart, which is essential for making progress in the spiritual life.
Amen.
Yeah, I have to admit, I love the moments of consolation. I'm kind of, I depend on them, and sometimes I become very dependent upon them. So, to your point, you got to be strong no matter what.
Yeah, Ignatius advises actually asking the Lord for it back. We're not meant to just be in the darkness.
Well, I love it. Whew, beautiful job, Andrew. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to Morning Offering.